everybody. Welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Herdmont Stadium, home to the Oak Mountain Eagles, where our game of the week is going to take place this Friday night between the Oak Mountain Eagles and Thompson Warriors, a big region showdown between those two teams in the second week of region action. But last week we kicked off region play, and a lot of excitement to talk about. We'll recap everything that happened last week, including big wins for, obviously, the Thompson Warriors, who will be taking part in our game of the week out here against the Eagles. They take down number 1 Hoover. Head coach Mark Freeman picks up win number 200. So a big Friday night for the Thompson Warriors. The Chelsea Hornets win their second game in a row. We'll talk more about that, as well as the Montevallo Bulldogs as they pick up a big region win to kick off region play as well. So a lot to touch on last week, but we also have the second week of region action kicking off this Friday night, and the games this week are just as good. We're going to have a lot of entertaining matchups, just a few that come to mind. Spain Park traveling or hosting Mountain Brook this Friday night. You've also got a Chelsea team playing good that's going to be hosting Jackson Olin. Halina coming off a bye going to Homewood, and then obviously our game of the week out here at Herdmont Stadium. So a lot to touch on. We'll talk about each of the games coming up this Friday night, look back at what we saw last Friday, and then at the end, as we do every week, we'll name our SCR Stars of the Week. A lot of standout performances from that first week of region action, so we'll talk about all of that, but we're going to start right here with our game of the week. So this is going to be a big region matchup for both of these teams, and for different reasons, really. Obviously, Oak Mountain coming off a tough 50-33 loss to the Hewitt-Trussville Huskies right here in this stadium a week ago. But if you look at that matchup, it was a 5-point game late. Going into the fourth quarter, Oak Mountain only trailed that one 38-33. So we saw some positive things from the Eagles coming off that bye week and their week 1 victory over the Chelsea Hornets 17-0. And the Thompson Warriors obviously coming off one of their biggest wins in school history as they take down the Hoover Buccaneers, number 1 team in the state. And you expect Thompson's likely going to be either the number 1 or number 2 team in the state this week. So you've got one of the best teams in the state taking on a team that's shown they can do some things offensively. And that's going to lead to what I expect to be a high-scoring matchup between these two teams. Last year, a 35-21 game, and just like this 3-game stretch for Oak Mountain last year where they took on Hewitt-Trussville, Thompson, and Hoover 3 straight weeks, it's going to be the same thing this year. And last week, just like last year, they competed with the Huskies, almost pulled off that upset again this year. And now they get a Thompson team coming off a big win over Hoover, an emotional ride last week in that victory against the Buccaneers. So this is really the perfect time for Oak Mountain to get this Thompson team. And head coach Mark Freeman obviously picking up his 200th win in that game against Hoover, a big night for him. But this is the team that really he just hates to play simply because of the way that they run their offense. It's an option attack offense, and that makes it difficult to prepare for, not only on a short week, but especially when you're coming off such an emotional win that Thompson came off of last week. So they're going to have to be focused, prepared, and make the adjustments to play this team defensively. It's an Oak Mountain offense that obviously returns Evan Smith at quarterback, but this ground game is intense. It's very good, and Thompson last week, they struggled at stopping the run against Hoover. Quarterback Robbie Ashford was really doing whatever he wanted to until he went down with an injury late in that game. And this week, Thompson's really going to have to shore up that side of the football and stop the run, because last week, Oak Mountain, they went off for 300-plus rushing yards between Judah Tate and Jonathan Bennett. Those two guys, Judah Tate with 181 rushing yards, Jonathan Bennett with 116. So two guys that can tote the rock, not to mention their quarterback in Evan Smith, now a sophomore here at Oak Mountain, but he's still such a dynamic playmaker and an athlete at the quarterback position for the Eagles. And he can be a game changer. He's a guy that's worked on his throwing ability, can do some different things. They have a tall receiver in Noah Young out wide to throw the football to. So if Thompson wants to pull away in this game like they should, they're going to have to be ready for that Oak Mountain option attack. The defense is going to have to step up and play a little bit better at stopping the run. That being said, this is a Thompson offense that's playing unbelievable right now. To hang 48 points on Hoover, it was just early in the game. They had some jitters and some nerves and struggled. But overall, they connected on everything they wanted to against Hoover, went out, put up those 48 points. Sawyer Pate continued to have a stellar season at the quarterback position, Mike Petway at the receiver position, and you look at a guy like Jarrett Crockett, who had an unbelievable game running the football last week, 100-plus yards on the ground against a very good physical Hoover defense. Now, this is an Oak Mountain defense that probably slightly improved from last year's team. That being said, it's not going to be the same physicality that they saw last week. They'll be physical, but the depth isn't quite as there for Oak Mountain as it would be for Hoover. So Thompson's going to have a big advantage in that regard. Their defense should be a little bit better, but I do expect a high-scoring game between these two teams simply because of the style of attack that Oak Mountain runs and because Thompson's basically been impossible to stop so far this year. It's a team that scored a combined 132 points through their first three games, 40-plus in each of those games, now averaging 43.3 through the first three as well. So this is a Thompson offense that's going to put up its points. It's can Oak Mountain keep up? If their option attack comes out and is clicking, if they can stay in the game like they did against you at Trustville, they're going to have chances to score late and keep this a game. Last week, like I said, they went into that game with the Huskies down by 5 points, 38-33, heading to the fourth quarter, and then in the fourth quarter gave up those 12 unanswered points. So if they can finish off the game, play that fourth quarter a little bit better this week, they'll have a chance, in my opinion, to pull off the upset. But in the end, I think Thompson's just got too much on the offensive side of the football. I think the defense can step up and make the plays they need to late to pull out another win, improve to 4-0 and 2-0 in region play. The Spain Park Jaguars defense is giving up 40 points per game through their first three games of the 2019 season. That's not something we've come to expect from a Sean Rainey coached football team, and it really just goes to show the youth on that side of the ball this year for the Jaguars, and it's cost them. And last week was the turning point for me. So far through the first two games, they were able to show some things offensively, showed one of the best offenses in the state against two 6A opponents, but against their first 7A opponent, the offense struggled. Vestavia Hill's a very good football team this year, shut them down, wins that game 45-7 a week ago over the Jaguars. So going into this week, the Jags are coming off back-to-back losses. They lose 2 weeks ago to 6A Bessemer City by 7 points in a game where they really fought, almost came back and won that game. But then last week they lose that one 45-7, and that's a tough one to bounce back from, obviously, with the offense not showing you what they can do. This week they do get a difficult matchup, a 3-0 Mountain Brook team, and they're looking to avoid their second straight 0-2 start in region play. Last year, the Vestavia game and the Mountain Brook game were the two that kept them out of the playoffs. This year, they're going to have to win this game with the gauntlet coming up over the next few weeks of Hewitt, Trustville, Thompson, and Hoover. This is a big matchup. Now, there's some injuries happening in Class 7A Region 3 that could open up things a little bit more moving forward, but right now the Jags really need to get a big victory, and this is a Mountain Brook team that can be susceptible. They're not playing great offensively so far this season, and that can keep Spain Park in this football team. It's not a team in Mountain Brook that's as good as it was a season ago, coming off a 31-21 win over Tuscaloosa County last week, and a couple of 6A opponents like the Jags before that. Tuscaloosa County and Spain Park, you got to expect Spain Park's a better team than Tuscaloosa County this year, especially on the offensive side of the football. So if the Wildcats were able to put up 21 on the Spartans, I expect the Jags to at least get to that mark, if not better, in this game. The question is, can that defense, that young defense, step up, make the plays late to win a football game? They're going to have to play better than they have the first 3 weeks. And right now there's just too much question mark on that side of the ball to believe that Spain Park can pull out the win. That being said, if they do step up and make those plays in this football game, they can pick up that first region win of the season. And honestly, they should. They should be able to improve. It's a head coach in Sean Rainey that is a solid defensive football coach. And this group of young players is going to gain that experience and that trust moving forward throughout the season. Eventually, they will catch up. The offense, I think last week was just a good Vestavia team. I do think the offense is going to bounce back this week, score a lot of points. And I expect if that defense does match up with that offense, this team could put together a good winning streak moving forward in region play. Whether it starts this week, that's to be seen. But I do expect this to be an entertaining football team between two teams that I think an entertaining football game between two teams that I think are fairly evenly matched on paper. The Chelsea Hornets have put together a 2-game winning streak now, coming off a 32-10 victory over Carver Birmingham. This is a team last year that won 2 games all of 2018, and those 2 wins came in the final 3 weeks of the season. This week, they get those 2 wins in the first 3 weeks of the season, so a big momentum boost, a big confidence booster there for the Chelsea Hornets early in this season. And last year it was a couple of early losses that were tight. Speaking of the game against Briarwood, they lost that one close. This game, this past Friday night against Carver, they lost in a close one as well. This year they've won both of those games. The Briarwood game, they obviously won there 17-14 in a close matchup. This past week they show a little bit more in the way of progressing and transitioning this year. And they go out and put up 32 points, one of their best offensive performances we've seen early in the season. It was really because of Collier Blair, the running back there at Chelsea, 100-plus rushing yards, 2 touchdowns for them in that win. It was a game early that they struggled on the offensive side of the football end, but the defense kept them in it. They have one of the best defenses, in my opinion, in the county this year, and one of the best in the 6A classification so far, giving up just 13.7 points per game. And now they have a chance at 3 in a row, and I think they can get it on Friday night against Jackson Olin. And this is a Jackson Olin team that is extremely talented, one that has some Division I players on the defensive side of the football, including an Alabama commit. But at the same time, it's a team many thought was going to win the region championship coming into the year, but now they're sitting at 1-2, and the only thing keeping them from an 0-3 start this year was a 2-point win early in the season over Fairfield, 26-24. The last 2 weeks, they've lost 20-8 to Minor and 38-12 to Shades Valley. So this is an offense that's really struggling. Each of the last 2 weeks, obviously just scoring 12 points and 8 points, and now you're taking on a Chelsea defense that I just said was one of the best in the county and in the 6A classification. It's going to be tough for Jackson Olin to move the football, score a lot of points, which means they're not going to run away in this game by any means if Chelsea plays their typical style defense. It's can Chelsea's offense continue to progress and score points in this football game? I think that they can. I think Collier Blair built his confidence last week. I think Caleb Moore is starting to get more and more comfortable at the quarterback position there under head coach Dustin Goodwin. This is a Chelsea team that should be 3-1 after Friday night, and where they were a year ago at this point, 0-4, that would be an impressive turnaround, and all the kudos to this team as well as Goodwin in getting that turnaround going in the right direction. The key to this game will be that offensive side of the football, but if they can put together a couple of good drives, get a 14-0, 10-0 lead in this game, it's tough for me to see Jackson Olin being able to come back with the offensive struggles we've seen from them. This matchup between the Halina Huskies and the Homewood Patriots, a road game for the Huskies, could be one of the best across the entire state on Friday night. It's two teams that want to get off to a solid start in region play. Homewood, obviously, that big win last week over the Pelham Panthers, 42-21 in that game. And it's a Halina team that's 1-1 right now, a win over McAdory to start the season, 38-14, and a tough loss to Hueytown, number 5 Hueytown, 32-24. And these are two teams that I think are battling for a region championship. With the struggles we've seen from Jackson Olin, with some struggles from some other teams, I think that these two teams are the front runners now, along with Minor, to win the region championship. So this is a huge game for both of these teams. Whichever one comes out, wins this game, has a leg up in winning the region championship. And if you just look at what we've seen from both so far this season, obviously Homewood playing well so far this season. They've taken on some tough competition, but they are sitting at 1-2. That first win last week, the 42-21 victory over Pelham. Before that, they lose their first 2 weeks of the season, lose to that same number 5 Hueytown in week 1, and then week 2 they get blown out by Vestavia Hills. You can't really take much away from that game against Vestavia Hills, but the game against Hueytown you can, because both of these teams have played them. And while Homewood played them in the first week of the season, you can expect some jitters and some struggles there. Halina did play them better when they played them 2 weeks ago. The Huskies also coming off a bye now, and if you look at the way this Halina football team's playing early in the season against that McAdory team to start the year, they played flawless, a great football game, ended up winning that one 38-14, obviously. And now you look ahead, coming off a bye week, that loss against Hueytown, they've had everything that they did wrong in that game. They've had an extra week to prepare, fix those mistakes. And it was really the first half in general. They made a ton of mistakes in that first half, fell behind the 8 ball. Then in the second half, we saw a Halina team that looked much more like the one we saw in the opener, a team that almost came back, made that a game late, and had their chances. Instead, lose by 8 points, but had the ball trying to tie the game there at the end. So it's a Halina team that's playing good football this year. They have a ton of talent, a ton of experience, and I think that's what gives them a leg up in this game is the experience factor. I think that Homewood's replacing a little bit more talent-wise this year, and while they are going into their fourth game, the 3 games into the season, they've had some time to kind of get over the hurdle of those new guys. I do think that Halina does have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to the experience. And honestly, I think they are the better football team. It's can they believe in themselves to pick up this win? That was the question coming into the season. They knew they had a ton of guys back. They knew they had a ton of talent. Now it's actually proving it. And this game is the one I think that makes the difference in their season. If they can win this one and then next week at against Minor, that's 2 games I think that really give them the region championship in my opinion, because after that it's just a matter of not tripping up to a team that you should beat. But if they win this one against Homewood on Friday night, they should be the favorite to win the rest of the way without doing something to cost them a game. So this is a big matchup for both. I think the winner does have that leg up, and I think that Halina honestly should be the favorite to win this football game. It's just a matter of going out there and proving it. This is a big game and big opportunity for the Calera Eagles, obviously trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak after their 1-0 start with that win against the Pelham Panthers 27-20 to open the season. But since that 27-0 first half that they had against the Panthers, Calera's been outscored 82-28 since that 27-0 first half. So it's a team that's really been struggling since then. They've shown some promise on the offensive side of the football. It's a defense that's really talented, but those mistakes by the offense have kind of put the defense in a bad spot at times as well. And then the defense has also made their mistakes at times throughout the season. But it's a team that has the talent, and against a Stanhope Elmore team, I think Calera honestly has more talent than Stanhope Elmore. It's just a matter of matching their depth, their physicality, and their stamina, because that's what's been key the last couple of weeks. They've played pretty well in the first half of these games, gotten off to some slow starts, but they've still played really good in the first half as a whole. And in the second half, it's when we've started to see that lack of depth and stamina that's really cost them at the 6A level. But this is a big week against a Stanhope Elmore team that is 1-2 right now on the season, or 2-1 on the season right now. And in those wins, they've given up just 7 and 8 points on the defensive side of the football. But the last 2 weeks, they've only scored a combined 12 points on the offensive side of the football, and just 36 through the first 3 weeks of the 2019 season. So this is a Stanhope Elmore team. They've played some tough competition. Their lone loss of 42-0 loss to Prattville. So it's a team that's shown some struggles on both sides of the ball through those first 3 games of the season, and Calera has to pounce on that opportunity. Now, can they do it? That's the question that we have to see answered on Friday night, because it's still a very talented and physical Stanhope Elmore team that's going to keep this game a defensive battle, and it's a matter of can Calera make those plays on the offensive side of the ball and avoid the mistakes on the offensive side of the football. If they can do that, this is going to be a very good football game, and Calera is going to have their chances again in the second half. With this Stanhope Elmore offense, I don't see them really running away with this game. I see it being like the first couple of games that we saw from Calera this season, where they go into the half either leading or down by just a score, and they're going to have their chances in the second half in this football game. It's just a matter of capitalizing on those chances and keeping Stanhope Elmore out of the end zone, trying to avoid that 3-game win streak. And this is a team all off season. They said they were improved. I've seen some improvement this year. Now it's time to step up and show that and prove it on the football field. A team that needs to avoid a 3-game losing streak and an 0-2 start to region play. I think they can get it done. It's just a matter of believing themselves in the second half and actually proving that on the football field. The Pelham Panthers that are off to an 0-3 start to the 2019 season, all 3 losses on their home turf there at Pelham, and now they get their first road test. And it might be just what the doctor ordered, simply because these are two struggling offenses coming into this matchup. While I did mention Minor as a strong contender to win a region championship in this difficult region, at the same time, they've shown some struggle on the offensive side of the football. Neither team has scored more than 21 points yet through their first 3 games so far this season. Pelham obviously coming off of that difficult loss last week to Homewood, a game where they just were flat out of the gates. They fell behind 22-0 in the first 4 minutes of that game, and then had their chance. They had stopped, finally forced a 3-and-out, and they muffed a punt, and that just really kind of killed their morale and the demeanor there for Pelham. They were able to bounce back, only lose that game 42-21, showed some promising things, and they've done that in every game. They've shown some promise with a bunch of young football players, and that's the thing a lot of people don't realize about this Pelham team is how young they are, specifically up front on the offensive line, and then really across the entire defense, especially in the front 7 on the defensive side of the football. So there's a lot of new faces, a lot of rebuilding happening at Pelham, but this is a team that's shown some glimpses of things throughout their first 3 games. They've had a good quarter or 2 in each of their games. If they can put it together for a complete game, even a complete half or 3 quarters, it's a team that not only is going to be in the football game, but could upset Minor this Friday night. Like I said, both offenses struggling. Minor does have a slightly better defense, and that could be the difference in this game. That could be what makes them the favorite in winning this football game, because they're only giving up 16.3 points per game right now compared to Pelham at 29.3 points per game. It's not a game where I see either team pulling away, so that's going to give Pelham a chance. It's just a matter of that offense making the plays late. They've had their chances in their first 2 games to do that, and they fell up just short. And then it's also going to be up to the defense to keep them in this football game. Minor should by no means run away from Pelham in this one. So if the defense can keep them in it, give the offense a chance to finally make that game-changing play so that Pelham can pick up their first win of the season. And not only their first win, but just 2 weeks into region play, it would be a huge one that still keeps them in playoff contention moving forward. The Briarwood Lions off to their first 0-2 start since the 2015 football season. Obviously not the way that first-year head coach Matthew Forrester wanted to start his tenure, but at the same time, they've still shown some progress from last year in certain aspects of the game, and they've played 2 difficult teams, a 6A Chelsea team that's obviously shown a lot of improvement, and then a Pleasant Grove team that's also in the top 10 of the Class 5A standings, a very difficult matchup for Briarwood last week. Pleasant Grove wins that one 26-14. But now they get a chance to really build some confidence against a Woodlawn team that's given up a combined 106 points, lost by a combined 106-0 the last 2 weeks to American Christian and Winona. Briarwood's going to have their chances to build a lot of confidence in this game. They're going to pull away in this one, win this one pretty easily. It's about how they react moving forward, because the 2 weeks after this, they do have a very good Winona football team that's improved from last year, more like the Winona team we saw a couple years ago. And then you also have a 6A Hartselle team the following week that's also a very good football team. So that's going to be back-to-back weeks. And then Ramsey still looms later down the line as a big region matchup as well. Briarwood still has everything they want to accomplish ahead of them. If the offense can continue to take the strides forward, the quarterback position can continue to improve. They've got a solid defense, as they do every year. Last week they were in that game. The 26 points, really that was a late score that made that game what it was by a 12-point win for Pleasant Grove. The rest of the game, it was within 1 score for both teams. So that was a tightly contested game. They have what they need on the defensive side of the football to be every bit as good as they normally are there at Briarwood. It's can they get that consistency on the offensive side of the football. Obviously, just 14 points in each of their first 2 games. Luke Pruitt's shown a lot at the running back position. We've seen a lot out of the receivers as well, making plays. It's just a matter of being more consistent on that side of the ball, specifically in the passing game moving forward. If they can shore that up, become a better football team on the offensive side, the defense is going to continue to improve and get better throughout the season, as I would expect, and I think the offense is going to do the same. I've seen some promising things from this Briarwood football team through the first 2 weeks of the season. I think you're only going to see them get better, and it's going to start this week with a big win over Woodlawn. The Shelby County Wildcats are now 0-3 on the season, but it's 3 losses by 8 points or less, obviously coming off a difficult 40-33 loss to Chilton County this past Friday night, but a game that they fell behind pretty big in, were able to come back, show some things late in that game, made it a 7-point contest late, and almost pulled off the comeback victory. Instead, they sit at 0-3, and all 3 of those losses, like I said, coming by 8 points or less. So it's a team that's been so close, and that's just been the theme of this team over the last several years. It's what's kept them out of the playoffs each of the last several years as they try to end that 10-year playoff drought this year with that last playoff berth coming in 2009. So it's a team that's shown a lot of positivity on the offensive side of the football. They've scored a lot of points through their first 3 games of the season. The problem is the defense has given up 40 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games dating back to last year. And this year, each of the last 2 weeks, obviously the 56 to Montevallo 2 weeks ago, and then the 40 to Chilton County this past Friday night. So it's a defense that's got to get better. The offense has shown a lot of promise and a lot of ability to score the football, but the defense has really lagged behind and hasn't made the plays that it's needed to. This week they get a Bibb County team that is a very good football team, don't get me wrong, but at the same time it's a Bibb County team that's not going to blow you away. They haven't blown anybody off the field, and while they've played a difficult schedule, they've only won games 8-6, 19-17, and 13-12 this year. So their biggest wins by 2 points so far this season, and they haven't scored more than 19 points in 2 of those games less than 13 or less points. So this is a defense that a Shelby County defense that cannot allow Bibb County to run away in this game, because they have the offense with that option attack to keep this game close, to eat up a lot of the clock, score a lot of points, and that can really benefit this Shelby County football team. I think if they can improve slightly on the defensive side of the ball, and not just slightly, just any sort of improvement on that side of the football this week, then they'll be able to stay in this game. They'll have their chances again to win this game late. Last year, another one of those heartbreaking games for Shelby County. They lost 30-24. They can't afford that this year. They've got to pick up that first win, because everything they want to accomplish still ahead of them. They can still end that playoff drought. It's just a matter of them winning those close games and believing they can do it, going out there in the fourth quarter and just out-physicaling the other football team. If they can do that in this one, I think they'll have a chance to win. But it is a very good Bibb County team that's not going to make a lot of mistakes, and they're going to make some plays on the defensive side of the football to win. Can Shelby County overcome that will determine how they handle this situation. It's been an impressive couple weeks for the Montevallo offense. Obviously, that 56-50 win over Shelby County a couple weeks ago, where every one of their offensive stars went off, and that happened again this past Friday night. And really, it was Jamarius Carter who stepped up opposite of J.J. Evans. Those 2 receivers are something else there for the Bulldogs. But Montevallo picks up a 48-24 win over Dallas County. And after just scoring 14 points in that season-opening loss this year, Montevallo has bounced back, scored a combined 104 points the last 2 weeks on the offensive side of the football. And that doesn't bode well for a Jemison team that comes into this matchup off a 41-17 loss to Central Tuscaloosa. It shows that their defense is very susceptible to a lot of points. That being said, this is a Jemison team that's up a classification in Class 5A, and what that tells me is that this offense for Jemison will be able to score some points against a Montevallo defense that struggled so far this season. It's a defense that's given up a combined 122 points through their first 3 weeks of the season. Last year, this was a high-scoring game, a game that Montevallo won 64-41. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something almost identical to that in this matchup, just simply because Montevallo's offense is so talented. They're going to score points. I have no doubt in that. When you have J.J. Evans and Auburn commit out wide on one side who can go up and grab the ball on any given possession, and now you have a Jamarius Carter receiver coming off a 3-touchdown performance with 180 or 179 receiving yards a week ago. Those are 2 guys, both tall, that can go up, grab the football. And then you also have running backs in Orlandis Weeks and Deion Gilliland that can both go over 100 yards, score multiple touchdowns, and a very capable and trustworthy quarterback in Malik Bennett. So it's such a talented offense. You're not going to keep them out of the end zone. The question becomes for Montevallo moving forward, especially as we get into some bigger games in region play. This is a non-region contest for them on Thursday night. But as they move forward, they're going to have some important region games where the defense is going to have to play better. They need to see that improvement. We saw it a little bit last week in that win against Dallas County. So now it's a matter of continuing to improve and build off of that moving forward. If they can do that, this team by far can be one of the best in the 4A classification, can compete for a state championship. It solely relies on how the offensive line and the defense plays for Montevallo, because that talent at the skill positions on the offensive side of the football is so good that they can compete with anybody throughout the rest of the season in the 4A classification. They've just got to get a little bit better on the defensive side of the football. I expect them to win this game against Jemison, but I do want to see that improvement from the defense, and that can determine whether they really pull away or whether this is a high-scoring game that goes back and forth. But I like the Bulldogs to pull out a win simply because of all that talent on offense. The final two games we'll talk about this week are come in the AISA and the ACSC as the Cornerstone Chargers travel to Chambers Academy and the Evangel Lightning host Freedom. These are two teams in really different situations right now. If you look in the AISA at Cornerstone, obviously sitting at 0-3 on the season, coming off that 44-0 loss to number 10 Crenshaw Academy. Now this week they get an even tougher test in number 4 Chambers, who's 3-0 right now, scoring an average of 38.7 points per game. It's a game that Chambers won 57-7 a year ago, so I fully expect them to be able to handle this game, improve to 4-0, and Cornerstone's going to be off to a tough 0-4 start. Continuing to see progression from the Chargers is going to be key moving forward as they do get into some winnable games in the second half of the season that will determine whether they make the playoffs. Evangel coming off a big win last week over a team from Tennessee and Ellsworth Harding. They won that one 82-55, and we finally got to see that excitement, the fireworks from that talented Evangel offense. Now they get Freedom this week. It's an 8-man team, second 8-man game in a row after two 11-man games for Evangel. So now they get a second 8-man team in a row, and it's a Freedom team that's coming off a 42-8 loss and a 56-20 loss the last 2 weeks. With Evangel's offense clicking, it's tough to see them, really falling behind at all in this game. I expect them to pull away, show that offensive talent and explosiveness that we saw last week again this week, as they pull away for a big victory as well. Now it's time for our SCR Stars of the Week segment, and man, did some guys step up big in the first week of region play. We're obviously going to start with the number 4 Thompson Warriors and their upset of the number 1 Hoover Buccaneers, and the guy that was key coming into that matchup for me was Jeremiah Alexander, the outside linebacker there for the Thompson Warriors. He was going to be key in containing Robbie Ashford, and while Ashford really had a successful football game until getting injured late, Alexander did make some big plays. He had 3 tackles for loss and 7 total tackles, and a couple of those tackles for loss were while Ashford was still in the football game. The last one came late in that game as Hoover was looking to make a drive to stay in the football game, but Alexander pushed them backwards early on that drive, and then followed that Montage Cook with a big sack. Those two guys really stepped up big late in that game to help Thompson stay ahead and preserve that win as they pulled away for the 48-30 victory. You look at the offensive side of the football, we expected fireworks in this game, but for Thompson to not only win this game by 18 points, but put up 48 points against a very physical and good Hoover defense, it was impressive to say the least. And it starts with Sawyer Pate, the quarterback, who just continues to get better and better each week. And against his toughest competitor to date, he still had an impressive performance with 3 touchdowns, went 19-26, 194 yards passing in that game, and 11 total touchdowns through the first 3 games with no interceptions so far this season. So Sawyer Pate's playing unbelievable football to lead this team, and he's able, in my opinion, this Thompson football team almost looks as good or better than it did a year ago with all those incredible all-state players they had across the football field, and in large part because of Sawyer Pate right now. He's dropping the football exactly where it needs to go and is making incredible decisions for the Thompson Warriors so far this football season. His top target, obviously, so far has been Mike Petway, a special connection there. Petway ended his Friday night against Hoover with 80 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 3 receptions. So a special game for him as he comes away with 2 touchdowns in that win. And then Jarrett Crockett, probably the surprise of that game, obviously has shown some talent through the first couple of games, but for him, against a very physical Hoover front seven, he was able to reel off 148 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. Really the best performance across the state on Friday night, in my opinion, in the biggest game that he's played in so far in his career. He's been there at Thompson, got some time last year, but this year I've been impressed with how he's emerged as the guy at running back there. They've also got 2 others in JoJo Gators and Brandon Franklin that have played some impressive football too, but Crockett has really stuck out and has played impressive football for the Thompson Warriors, and I think he can be a real key for this team moving forward to keep that balance on the offensive side of the football that's been so good for them so far this season. Now we switch over to the Oak Mountain Eagles, as we're going to see all these guys on the field here at our game of the week on Friday night here at Herdmont Park. But the Oak Mountain Eagles, obviously a difficult 50-33 loss to Hewitt-Trussville, but we saw 2 guys go off for them in the rushing attack, and that was Judah Tate and Jonathan Bennett. If you look at those 2 guys combined for more than 300 yards together, but Judah Tate with 181 by himself, and then Bennett posting 116 rushing yards as well. So very talented running back duo combined with the quarterback in Evan Smith that can do some special things running the football as well. Thompson's going to have their hands full in this game on Friday night trying to stop that dynamic rushing attack from the Oak Mountain Eagles, because they seem to only be getting better through their first 3 weeks. If they can stay healthy, it's going to be scary to see what this team's able to do moving forward, especially with some of the injuries we've talked about in that Class 7A Region 3, where really everything's kind of up in the air right now moving forward. Moving down to the 6A classification, the Chelsea Hornets, a game that was just impressive for them. Again, 32-10 win over the Carver Birmingham Rams this past Friday night, and it really was in large part because of Collier Blair at the running back position with 120 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as the defense that, like I said, has been one of the best in the county through the first 3 weeks. I've been thoroughly impressed with how well they've played. They really did a great job of shutting down Oak Mountain in Week 1 despite the 17-0 loss. They forced a lot of fumbles, stepped up in that one, and then over the last 2 weeks with wins over Briarwood and Carver, they've just continued to improve, and I think are one of the best defenses so far. They helped them in that game. Chelsea fell behind early to Carver, but that was it. They gave up those 10 points in the first half, and the rest of the way it was all Chelsea. So the defense really stepped up big in that one. In the 5A classification, we look at the Briarwood Lions, obviously off to that 0-2 start, but Luke Pruitt is playing impressive football so far this season. A 99-yard kickoff return in that game against Chelsea and a 27-yard touchdown run there. And then this past week, 16 attempts for 92 yards and an additional touchdown. So he's a solid playmaker, one of the best running backs in the county. I continue to look for them to take advantage of him moving forward as he continues to put up some big performances. And then finally, our last few SCR Stars of the week, all at Montevallo. As we mention these guys almost every week for their ability to put up big performances. But Jamarius Carter, one of the best performances of the week this past Friday night, 179 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns for the Montevallo Bulldogs. You look at other guys, Orlandis Weeks, Deion Gilliland, Malik Innabinet, J.J. Evans also had standout performances. But, man, was it special to see what Carter was able to put up. And if he's able to do that each week, which I think he can moving forward, this is a Montevallo football team that's going to be extremely difficult to stop because of really the talent that they have across the board on that offensive side of the football. That's going to do it for this edition of the Shelby County High School Football Show. I appreciate you all for tuning in. It's going to be a big second week of region play as only 3 AHSAA teams, 1 region games last week. Moving ahead to this week, that's 6 teams that lost that need to bounce back with a big win on Friday night. We'll see how they handle that coming up on Friday. We're going to have several big matchups we've talked about throughout this show. Make sure you get out, catch one of those football games. We'll be out here with our Facebook Live video from Herdmont Stadium between the Thompson Warriors and the Oak Mountain Eagles in our game of the week. And we'll also have all of our stories and great coverage on Twitter and Facebook throughout the night. So make sure you tune into that as well. But for now, that's going to do it from here at Herdmont Stadium.